Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome to a 2019 MXGP season preview here on Start Your Systems today. We're going to be kind of detailing some of the upcoming storylines to follow in the MXGP series, which is kicking off this weekend in Argentina. This is why I'm also playing the track Argentina, or Nequin, in MXGP2. Just playing MXGP2 today because I'll be doing recap videos each week of the GPs as they happen in MXGP Pro. So I didn't want to use up the MXGP Pro Argentinian track just yet. I wanted to save that for a review video, so I decided to go back a little throwback today, a couple years, to MXGP2, play that on Argentina today, and then yeah, talk about this upcoming race and the chaos that's going to ensue with it. So hope you guys sit back and enjoy this video. I guess I can just jump right in to the MXGP class and what's going to kind of be some things to watch for this weekend, some things to pay attention to. Obviously the season getting underway this weekend, but a lot of the MXGP class guys have actually already been racing quite a few races this off-season. There's obviously been the Italian Championship. Just these last couple weeks alone, there's been the Hawkstone International in Great Britain, and then the La Capelle, I guess it's just a La Capelle motocross race in France. That a couple guys went and raced. I think Roman Fevre swept at La Capelle, and then Max Anstey went 1-1 at Hawkstone, but then Ivo Monticelli won the super final because Anstey, I believe, had a mechanical issue. Either way, lots of things to pay attention to in the off-season. Arguably the biggest thing to pay attention to that happened during the off-season was the injury to Jeffrey Hurling's foot. He broke his foot in the off-season and got surgery done on it pretty much immediately after he broke it. I want to say it happened, man, about a month ago now, a little over a month ago, I believe. And it was pretty much immediately assumed that he was not going to make it to the opening round of the GP. I think most people knew that going in, but Red Bull KTM officially announced that this week, that defending champion Jeffrey Hurlings is going to miss the opening round here in Argentina. And it's pretty likely he's going to miss the next couple of rounds and maybe not make it back till somewhere in the area of round 4, maybe even round 5, as deep as that could be. That would be Hong Kong when they go to China, that he might make it back for. But everyone's talking maybe he makes it back for Matterley, maybe he makes it back for Valkenswaard. It's really tough to tell because there's no like set timeline for him even getting back on the bike yet. There's still some, you know, he's got to go back and get scanned by the doctors again and make sure everything's healing properly and all that. But at the very least, it sounds like he's going to enter this championship at a pretty massive deficit. And I know a lot of people were wondering, well, if he's not going to make it into the, you know, championship right off the bat and maybe be way behind in the championship right away, does he come race in the United States and race the Nationals, the 12-round National Series? Those rumors have been all but dispelled at this point. Dirk Grubel at Red Bull KTM and Pit Buyer are basically coming out and saying like that's not going to happen. They've said that in these interviews that he's not going to do it. Like he's contracted to race the GP series. I would personally love to see him come race in the USA for twofold reasons. Number one is because I would love to see Antonio Cairoli win his 10th world title, and number two is I'd love to see a top GP guy come to the USA and race a full national schedule and see how they do. Just, you know, like as kind of like a one-off. I don't want Hurlings here full time. I think that his place belongs in Europe for the next, you know, foreseeable future. But this almost seems like a too good to be true opportunity that he's going to be so far down in the GP standings that it might behoove of KTM to just let Cairoli go out there and win this championship if he can, and Hurlings go do something else, perhaps win in the USA. But disregard that point because I don't think it's going to happen. So if Hurlings does come back 3-4 rounds into the series, he's going to be at a pretty big deficit, as mentioned, and it's pretty likely he'll be behind Antonio Cairoli leading this thing on some level. I mean, Cairoli was basically the only guy to win races last year besides Hurlings. Clement Tessau got in there with a couple, or actually I think he won one race. I think he won the Russian GP, but everything else was all Red Bull KTM. I mean, Hurlings won 17 GPs last year of the 20. There's only 19 rounds this year. But obviously he's not going to match that 17 GP wins from last year, I guess, unless maybe he makes it back by round 3 and then wins out from there, but that's a tall task. So we're left looking at a potential situation where Cairoli can start the season, maybe sweep the first 4 or 6 motos and open up, at the very least, a 100-point lead on Hurlings before it even comes back. And all signs point to something like that happening because Cairoli was dominant in most of the Italian championship rounds. I think the only blemish was, I believe, Roman Febvre won one of the motos that they went up against each other, and I think that in itself was because Cairoli crashed on the start. So he's been fantastic. He's, aging like fine wine is Antonio Cairoli. I guess as an Italian that happens, but he looks like almost more prepared than ever to come into the season and ready to pounce and ready to win. And a lot of the eyes have shifted to him as the potential winner for these first few GPs and sneak away with the red plate. And he's publicly come out and said, every race is an open race. Like, it's not like I'm going to come out here and beat everybody. They still have the chance to beat me, and that's always humble Cairoli. But if we're being honest here, it's pretty well expected Cairoli's going to win at least this weekend in Argentina. He's always been good in Argentina, and I don't see it going any other way than a Cairoli 1-1 this weekend. That being said, this may be the first year in a little while that just about everybody except the defending champion Hurlings is coming in relatively healthy. Obviously, Tim Geiser had last year, he was coming off of a massive crash that left him sidelined before the season that he had at Monster Cup in 2017, and he never really seemed to get the ball rolling too well in 2018 until he yard sailed. I want to say this was in Turkey that he did this, and he shattered his jaw and had to have his jaw wired shut and get healed and everything like that. So Geiser had a pretty rough 2018, and I think he's wanting to put that behind him, and he's coming in pretty well prepared into 2019 as maybe the biggest threat, I would say, towards Cairoli as one of the other 2 world champions sitting on the line against Cairoli, Geiser and Roman Febvre, the 2 other world champions. I think Geiser is probably the biggest standout. I think he has maybe the most potential to take it to Cairoli because he seems to have the most raw speed, and most of the time last year it was Geiser beating Febvre until he got hurt anyway. So I really looked as Tim Geiser as maybe the guy that can do the most challenging to Cairoli this weekend. Personally speaking, I don't think Cairoli's going to be challenged. I just think he's going to get the whole shot, both motos, and walk away. But if anybody does step in, I see Geiser being that guy. Febvre looked great, like I said, getting a moto win in the Italian Championship looked good. I believe he went 1-1 at La Capelle this past weekend too, so he's maybe the best we've seen Febvre in a while, in terms of preparation and no injuries and everything like that coming into the season. But I think I have to put Geiser a little bit ahead of him. And then behind that, Clement Desaulles probably coming in pretty healthy, but just like Cairoli, he's getting up there in the years a little bit. Febvre and Geiser are still spring chickens comparatively to Desaulles and Cairoli, who have both been in the MXGP class for more than 10 years at this point. So, they are, getting up there in age. Desaulles is the leading man at Kawasaki alongside Julian Lieber, who seems to kind of struggle with the injury bug since he's made it into the 450 class, but looking to Geiser, or to Desaulles, I should say, as being the leader of that team, I think that they fully expect him to be a championship contender right from the beginning here, and I want him to be. I like Desaulles. I think Desaulles is a great rider, and he's always been kind of just that little tick off of the world champions every year, even when Febvre and Geiser snuck in with their world titles. It just seemed like Desaulles was just a little bit off and could never seem to get the ball rolling those years. And then now this past year is pretty much the only guy to even take it to the KTM. So, look to Desaulles to kind of continue his trend of being just a steady guy. Like, when he's not hurt, he is always a top 5 guy and a chance at winning each week. But I struggle to feel that that's going to, turn into multiple race victories this year. Maybe he sneaks in with a GP win. I don't know. Like, I think when Hurlings comes back, he'll win GPs. Cairoli's going to win GPs. I think Geiser will win GPs. I would say that behind that, I look at Desaulles, Febvre, Anstey, Paulin. All those guys are guys that could win motos. I don't know if I see them jumping out and dominating GPs and winning them hands down and things like that. They could, I don't know if I see it. It really kind of depends. I'm really curious this weekend to see where everybody is. Like, what are we actually feeling? These preseason races sometimes aren't necessarily the best precursor to what's actually going to happen on the racetrack, just because, you know, they're so random, they're so wild. Like, you know, the Italian Championship, it's basically Cairoli's backyard. So is he as dominant as everybody says? I think he is, but maybe he's not. Maybe he just was comfortable there, and Febvre really has stepped up his game this year, and him and Geiser are going to, you know, take it to Cairoli here early in the season and prevent Cairoli from really getting away like he did with Herlings last year. Things like that could happen. I don't know. Obviously, we look at, like I said, Anstey, Paulin getting in the mix, as well as a couple potential guys to get in there, kind of shake things up a little bit. Both of them switching teams this year. Everybody else I've talked about so far is coming back on the same team, with Cairoli, Red Bull KTM, Clement Tassal, Monster Energy Kawasaki, and then Romain Febvre, Monster Energy Factory Yamaha, and Tim Geiser are going to be on HRC Honda. Gauthier Paulin goes from the Ice One Husqvarna factory team to Wilvo Monster Energy Yamaha, which is technically not the factory Yamaha team. They'll look pretty similar to the factory bikes this weekend. He won't look that different from the setup that Romain Febvre's running, but it is not a factory team. They get some support, but it's a satellite effort, and I think, you know, Geiser, I'm sorry, Dassault, I'm going to just keep messing up names. Paulin is going to try to, you know, get that kind of a satellite team up onto the box and maybe start winning races. He looked so good at the Motocross to Nations, but it seems like that's Paulin's MO every year, that he hauls ass at the Nations, and then for whatever reason it never translates into speed at GPs. Like, he never is that same guy during a GP weekend. I hope he can do it. It'd be great to see a satellite effort like Wilvo Yamaha get up there and challenge, but like I said, I kind of put him in that group with the, you know, Ansteys, the Koldenhoffs, etc., that they have the speed to win motos and potentially win GPs. But if last year's anything to go off of, I don't know if it's going to happen. Like, they need to kind of almost take 2 steps up and get into that group and mix it up with Cairoli and Herlings, whereas like Geiser and Febvre just need a couple things to go their way, and suddenly they're, you know, real contenders again. So, but yeah, so Paulin going to Wilvo Monster Energy Yamaha, and Anstey going to Standing Construct KTM alongside his new teammate Glenn Koldenhoff. So Koldenhoff exiting Red Bull KTM. That team is now essentially a 2-rider team in the 450 class with Cairoli and Herlings. Koldenhoff goes to Standing Construct KTM with Anstey, and Anstey also left Ice One Factory Husqvarna Racing to go to Standing Construct as well. So those are 2 guys in Anstey and Koldenhoff that I think are both kind of wanting to come in this year and prove, like, hey guys, we deserve the factory rides. Like, we are race-winning speed type dudes. It's crazy to imagine that after going 1-1 at the Motocross to Nations, that technically speaking, Koldenhoff isn't on a factory team. I always hate to say that because like Standing Construct, Wilvo, all those teams, they put on great efforts. Like, they go to all the GPs, they have great, you know, support and all that, but it's technically speaking not the factory team. It's not factory KTM. So I think, like I said, Anstey and Koldenhoff both have something to prove. Now, Koldenhoff, unlike Anstey, is coming in well behind the 8 ball. I think a lot of you guys probably saw his vicious wreck at Lommel while training in the off-season. It was mid-December that it happened. Cracked a couple vertebrae, cracked his wrist. Just got back on the bike a couple weeks ago, so he is definitely going to have like an uphill battle these first couple of GPs to kind of get back into the swing of it. You know, the long motos, the heat, all that, because they're going to South America where it's going to be kind of summertime still on some level. And I think that he might struggle at this opener, Will Koldenhoff. I don't think Anstey's going to have any problems. I fully expect Anstey to be battling for the top 5s this weekend. But on the flip side, you know, Koldenhoff definitely has to take these first couple rounds as just getting his feet wet again and getting kind of the pace back up to where he thinks he should be at with everybody else. Behind that, I mean, there's a lot of names that could go into this mix. Obviously, guys like Arnaud Tonis and Jeremy Sewer, who Tonis is going to be Paul Land's teammate on the Wilvo Monster Energy Yamaha team. Seawer moves up to the factory team, replacing Jeremy Van Horbeek, outgoing from that team, and Seawer now rides alongside Roman Fevre on factory Monster Energy Yamaha. So you'll see Seawer on the number 91 this weekend. The two Swiss riders, I mean, they both are guys that obviously won a lot of races in the 250 class, haven't really converted it into anything magnificent in the 450 class just yet. But again, they can be sneaky fast, get in the mix, change things up a little bit, you know, kind of throw a wrench in the plans of some of our top 5 contenders and fully get into that mix and change things up. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. Like I said, Argentina is always such a interesting race, especially now that it's the first race of the year, because not only is it like a flyaway race and it's maybe like one of the best tracks on the circuit, but you know, everybody's so fired up and loose at the beginning of the year like this that anybody could come out and shine and impress. And I don't know if I'd be surprised having someone like a Seawer or a Tonis get up inside of the top 5 and really challenge this weekend. They fully can do it. They just need to probably get good starts and run up there, you know. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Maybe kind of the biggest new talking point to the class is Pauls Jonas signing I think a multi-year deal with Ice One Rockstar Energy Husqvarna Factory Racing. So the MX2 world champion from 2017 moves up. He was forced out of the MX2 class due to the age rule, and here he is making his MXGP class debut this weekend. However, he is going to be kind of like Coldenhoff, a little bit behind the 8 ball. He got injured in the offseason and only has been on the bike for, I believe, 3-4 weeks now, so a little bit more time than Coldenhoff, but not enough time, I would say, to get fully prepared for a GP like this at Argentina. So I think Jonas is a guy that is going to be really interesting. I could either see him being a top 5 threat, or I could see him being a 15th place guy, and I don't feel like either one would be a shock to me. I don't necessarily see him just hovering around 7th every week. I see him either having tracks that he's really good at and breaking out, or tracks that he struggles at and definitely struggling. He's definitely not in the same realm as when we saw, you know, Geyser, Fevre, and stuff like that. These other MX2, well, Fevre wasn't even an MX2 world champion, but when we saw Geyser move up, Geyser was immediately quick, and he came right off of his MX2 world title. But like even Fevre moving up from the 250 class, I don't see Jonas being like those guys. Like he's not going to come in here and start winning races immediately. Eventually, could he? Sure, yeah, I think so. I think Jonas is a talented dude, but right off the bat, I don't know. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on that one, as well as his new teammate, the Ice One Husqvarna team. They changed up a ton. They, let go of Anstey and Paulin in favor of Pauls Jonas and Arminas Jasakonis. So Jasakonis, who basically took a whole year off of racing last year, back on a factory team. He was on factory Suzuki the last year they ran in 2017. Jasakonis is a really fast dude, really talented. He qualified fastest at the Hawkstone International, I believe it was, a couple weeks ago. Didn't turn it into great moto finishes, but he's sneaky fast. Like he's kind of one of those guys that on his good days, look out. He's 1,000 feet tall. He's one of the tallest guys on the grid, and rides a 450 fantastically. Obviously had to kind of go right up to a 450 because of his height, and I fully expect him to be pretty strong this year, honestly. I think that this is going to be a year that's almost kind of a make or break year for him, just because he was a little unproven on Suzuki, and it obviously didn't earn him a ride in 2018. So now that he's back on a factory team in 2019, I think that, he's kind of, like I said, got to prove his worth in this class. Like say, hey guys, I'm a consistent top 10 threat, top 5 on my good days, podium on my great days kind of thing. Like if he can do that this year, that'll be a huge plus side for Jasakonis, at least in my opinion. I think that some goals may be set a little bit different for other riders in this series, but that's kind of what I want to see out of Jasakonis this year now that he is on a factory team. What else can I talk about in this class? Kevin Strybaugh is going to miss the start of the year. He has an elbow injury that he sustained while testing out here in California. So no Kevin Strybaugh. He's going to be on that JWR Yamaha team alongside of Vsevolod Brylyakov. So Brylyakov will be here, but I think he's coming off an injury as well. So not going to look for anything crazy out of him. Talk briefly about Tommy Searle. Tommy Searle going to be racing for the Boss Factory KTM team alongside, I think Who else is on that team? Maybe it's just him. Oh, Evgeny Babyshev also on that team. So Babyshev and Searle coming into this year both on kind of stable rides. Searle's obviously been on the DRT Kawasaki team for a long time, so he probably wasn't too, you know, stoked on having to leave that deal, but going on to a pretty good team in Boss KTM. And Searle actually was pretty good when he was on Red Bull KTM. He just kind of, the MO with Searle is injuries, and I think that kind of hampered him really bad when he was on Red Bull KTM. So maybe getting back on a familiar machine on a KTM, maybe with his, you know, kind of healthy offseason, maybe we see some good things out of Searle this year. I don't know. Kind of same thing goes for Babyshev. Both of those guys, former GP winners. Babyshev in the 450 class, but a long time ago at this point. Factory Honda rider for so many years and has now kind of hopped around teams a bunch. Pretty much rode most of last season in the UK, like Arena Cross Series, and riding like at least at the beginning of the year, he's basically riding like a privateer Suzuki. It's a Select GPs, and then Boss GP signed him on, and he finished off the season with them. So now he's back with the team, and looking forward to seeing him and Searle take it on this weekend. Let's see, did I miss anybody? I guess final thought I could mention from the MXGP class is maybe kind of look out for Ivo Monticelli. He won the super final at the Hawkstone International this 2 weekends ago, and yeah, I think he was a little bit helped by Anstey's bike issues, I believe it was. But Monticelli is a guy that is kind of sneaky fast sometimes. Like, you don't necessarily expect him to be really good, and then he comes out and surprises you. So Monticelli looking like he's coming into the season pretty strong. I think that's about it. I think I hit on pretty much everybody in this class. Max Nagel, Jeremy Van Horbeek, going to be a couple guys that will be out there, a couple guys that have won races before, but definitely in the later stage of their career. Obviously Van Horbeek losing the factory Yamaha ride, so maybe he has a point to prove, but I don't know if it equates to wins or anything like that. He's been basically doing enduro races the entire offseason, doing Les Touquettes and things like that, so I don't know. I'm not too positive in Max Nagel or Van Horbeek, but who knows? They're veterans. They could pull a win out of their tuckus on occasion. But that's the MXGP class. Let's jump over to the MX2 class. I've been talking for so long in this video, and we haven't even made it to the other half of the broadcast, essentially. Yeah, the MX2 class, does anybody, like, please show of hands, does anybody think Jorge Prado is not going to win the world title this year? I mean, if you believe that, and it ends up happening, I would definitely go try to pick up a lottery ticket, because I've never been more sure, excuse me, more sure of a 250 class champion, maybe ever, than Jorge Prado repeating this year. Obviously injuries would hamper that, but he was a class above the rest for most of the end of the season last year. Obviously won the MX2 class at Donations, and I mean, he's the next guy. Like, he's the future of the sport, across the board, really. Still a potential he comes to the United States, but that's a very low potential after his good couple of GP years the last couple of years, and obviously winning the title last year. I don't see how Prado doesn't repeat as world champion this year. Coming off of a great year, Donations, healthy offseason, etc., etc. Like, everything is in his favor to just go out here and just start laying it down, winning motos, winning overalls, going 1-1, etc., etc. I feel it's going to be the same this weekend. In my honest opinion, Red Bull KTM sweeps this weekend. Cairoli 1-1, and Prado 1-1. That's what I see happening this weekend. MX2, MX1, or MXGP class. Like, it's going to be a sweep at Red Bull KTM. I have a tough time slicing it any other way, especially in this 250 class, which I feel is like, you know, the depth is there, but it's almost like Jonas and then the depth. You know, like if Jonas, or why do I keep saying Jonas? Prado, it's like Prado and then the depth. You know, if Prado wasn't there, I think this might be one of the greatest MX2 World Championships ever, because there's so many guys I feel like could win that are behind Prado, but because Prado's still here, it's kind of like Prado and then the rest, like I said. But you have guys out there. You have Thomas Kjær Olsen, you have Calvin Valandrin, you have Jed Beaton, you have Darian Sinai, the American, in there. You obviously have like Ben Watson coming back this year, and obviously he's going to be really strong. There's a ton of guys in this class that could win. Jago Geerts, obviously had a couple good rides last year, finished second in Belgium. He could, I think, win. Gosh, who else? There's just a ton of guys that have a real good shot of shaking things up in this 250 class this year. For those of you fans down under, obviously Jed Beaton I already mentioned, the Aussie. And then Mitch Evans is also making his MXGP debut this weekend, or MX2 class debut, I should say. So keep an eye on the number 43 riding for 114 Honda. That's Olivier Lancelot's team. I think he could impress. He looked pretty good at Donations. I wouldn't say that he's going to be like an instant winning threat or anything, but maybe challenge for a top 5 or so this weekend. My biggest question mark this year, 100%, Tom Vial, the new rider for Red Bull KTM. After Jonas is forced out of the class, they go out and pick up Frenchman Tom Vial, and quietly he's been kind of impressive this offseason, like getting better, learning the ropes, and for whatever reason, man, these Red Bull KTM teams in Europe, they just take guys and turn them into superstars. Like, you know, no offense, but look at where Jordi Tixier is now. He is an MX2 world title holder, and he did that while on Red Bull KTM, and now he's like a 15th place MXGP class guy. It's just like another level when you're on a team like Red Bull KTM, and I'm gonna look at Tom Vial as a guy that, like, does he figure it out this year? Does he go fastest in a couple qualifying sessions? Does he even win a qualifying race? Does he finish on the podium a few times? I don't expect him to win GPs this year. I really don't. Like, he's brand new to the class, essentially. He's kind of an unknown, but when you're, like I said, if you're on Red Bull KTM, you have found like the magical ticket out there. It's almost the same thing with the Husqvarna team, especially in the 250 class. Those guys are on bikes that I just feel like are a step above the rest. They get all the whole shots, they lead all the races. Like, it's kind of like cheating almost. And I think Vial is in a really good spot because he may very quickly have to become the face of the 250 class for Red Bull KTM. Because if Prado wins this year, I believe he's forced out of the class. You can't three-peat in the 250 class anymore like Hurlings did after they changed the rules. So Prado at 19 years old going to be maybe out of the class, just like bam. Well, he'll be 18 at the end of this year essentially, but yeah, like 19 next year he might be out of the class. So then it might be put on the shoulders of Tom Vial to go out there and prove his worth. Like I said, he's definitely like my biggest, like, what's going to happen with Tom Vial this year? Will he be good or will he be a flop? And I don't know. If he's on Red Bull KTM, I tend to believe he's going to do pretty well. We'll have to keep an eye on old Tommy Viala, though, this weekend. Who else haven't I talked about? Brent Van Donk back in the class. Honda Red Moto Acer Motor. Just like a solid top 10 guy on a good day. I don't see him breaking out and doing anything crazy. Kind of feel the same way about like Davey Pooches and maybe Bas Vossen as well. Like Vossen, maybe the biggest upside of those three guys that I just mentioned. Vossen's going to be now on a new KTM team, Hitachi KTM, fueled by Milwaukee is the team name. So it's basically Hitachi KTM, but it's just like a new team name essentially. So I look at Vossen being pretty good. Gustavo Pessoa is going to be Darian Sinai's teammate on the Monster Energy DRT Kawasaki team. And Sinai, who I really haven't talked much about, is kind of... I think he's going to quietly be very impressive this year. I believe it might already be his last year of eligibility in the 250 class. I'm not 100% sure that's right, but I believe it's true. And he's got to like kind of make or break this year. I think he's looking to either impress a team in the USA to come back stateside next year or do so well that a 450 team wants to pick him up. But obviously being an American, I want to root for the Americans. So I'm all aboard the Sinai train this year. Take us to the top, Darian. He was really good last year. Then he got hurt 4 or 5 rounds into the series. and never came back. Just I forget what he did. I think it was, yeah, I don't want to be wrong, but I want to say ACL. And yeah, we never saw him again. So now the Tomcat Covington is out of the class and moved over to the United States once again. Shoulders firmly grasping our hopes is Mr. Darian Sinai for the American fans out there. And I don't know, man, he can be pretty good. I'm very excited to see him. Kind of a like surprise guy that maybe most people won't pay attention to because he won't probably be running at the front of the field, but everybody will remember the name Mikhail Pashon. His son Zachary Pashon is also racing this year. He's going to be number 101 on the Honda 114 Motorsports team. So that's kind of cool to see, you know, a former world champion Pashon have his son out here racing. Like I think that's really cool to see, like, generations continue on. We see it a lot in the GPs, obviously, with the Everts family, and Liam Everts is not too far away from being racing, and we're going to be talking about another Everts probably winning a lot of races. But even the Strybos family, with Dave Strybos and Kevin, and, you know, like things like that. It's just cool to see the family affair going on in the MXGP series all the time. And yeah, who else haven't I talked about? Dylan Walsh. Haven't even mentioned Dylan Walsh, the Kiwi out of New Zealand. Don't know much about Dylan Walsh. Kind of a question mark for me. I'm looking to see kind of where he sits this weekend. Where does he put himself in this field of very talented MX2 class riders? I really don't know. I don't have much information about him. I just know that it's, you know, a guy that has raced a lot of the New Zealand Nationals, Australian Nationals, picked up a ride over here, and maybe he comes out and impresses. Haven't even talked at all about, like, Conrad Muse, Michele Chervelin, Alvin Arsland, some of these kind of veterans of the MX2 class at this point, and how they're gonna do. I don't. Who knows? Chervelin, I thought, rode great at Donations for what it's worth. He's always kind of risen to the occasion as well at that race, so I don't know if I quite read into that as much as other people may, but heck, maybe he comes out and surprises everybody and finishes, like, you know, a steady 6th this weekend. I think would be a big weekend for Chervelin. Adam Sterry, another British rider for F&H Racing. I don't know, man. Sterry is hit and miss, as with most British riders, it seems, unfortunately. I feel like Ben Watson is, like, the most solid British rider out there anymore. Like Anstey, Searle in the 450 class, they have their great weekends and they have their terrible weekends. Sterry sometimes has his great weekends and he has his terrible weekends, whereas, like, Ben Watson is like, I'm just going to hover around the podium all the time, guys. I'm just going to be solid and put together motos, and, you know, hopefully it works out in the end. Like, of all the Brits, like, he's the most, like, out of the norm of the British riders, I feel like, is Ben Watson. But yeah, I don't know. Sterry, yeah, could be a top 5 threat, could be a 15th place guy. He's kind of like the Pauls Jonas of the 250 class, in that you have no clue what kind of Adam Sterry you're going to get on the weekend. Yeah, I no idea. Tons of other names mixed in here too that I haven't mentioned, like Brian Sue, Iker Larinaga, Mathis Busrame, jeez, man, Brian Moreau, tons of guys. Brian Moreau, for what it's worth too, that fans probably may not pay attention to. Moreau actually raced the Monster Cup this past year in the Amateur All-Stars class. Since he didn't actually have a confirmed pro license in Europe yet, he was allowed to race the Amateur All-Stars class. Now he's racing the full series in MX2 this year, and he's pretty fast. He's a really fast kid. Bud Racing Kawasaki, along with Brian Sue. Both those guys, I think, are, like, extremely stylish and have their good days. But look at all the names I've gone through on this list so far. Like, I've probably mentioned 20 names, and that's going to be the top 20. And there's probably a name on here that I haven't mentioned yet that could end up in the top 20. And like, that's a pretty deep MX2 field of guys that could impress or could not impress. You know, like, they could be total flops or they could do fantastic. Like, you have to kind of look almost at guys like Chervelin, like Muse, kind of like even Van Donnick, as, like, dude, you guys have been in the class for a while. Davey Pooches is another example. You've been in the class for a good while. It's time to step up. It's time to start finishing top 5 every week, you know? Do they do it? I don't really think so. You know, I think we're looking at definitely Prado winning races this year. And then I think you have guys like Vlanderen, probably Thomas Kjær Olsen. I want to say Darian Sinai. Those guys winning races, Ben Watson. And then like maybe Jed Beaton winning races this year. I have a tough time picking anybody else though. Like those 5 that I just mentioned plus Beaton as a 6th. That might be it this year. There's always chaos in these 250 classes, so I'm not going to swear to it, but those seem to be like the guys that I would say kind of rise to the front of my mind. And then behind that, just utter chaos. Like anything can happen in this 250 class. Literally anything can happen in this 250 class. Except for if Prado doesn't win, I will just be shook. Like I don't know what the heck happens if Prado isn't just checking out by 20-second wins each week, because quite honestly speaking, you lose the star power of Jonas and even Covington in that mix, and Prado doesn't have the same exact level of competition he had before. Like the field, technically speaking, got weaker, and I'd almost stress that Prado's going to get better. He's still so young. He only has room for improvement at this age. So yeah, Prado. I think he's winning this weekend. I think Cairoli's winning this weekend. I'm thinking Red Bull KTM sweep 1-1-1-1-1 with Prado and Cairoli at the front of the field. And then I think chaos ensues behind that, and I can't wait to watch it. For the United States fans, I believe it's going to be on CBS Sports again, like it has been in the past. I don't want to swear to it, but I think I read somewhere that it's going to be on late Sunday evening. If you want to watch it on MXGP TV, I think a season pass is about $150 for the whole season, including donations. And then I believe you can buy like a 1 race pass for $10 or so. So, you know, there's 19 GPs and donations. So technically speaking, you're getting the better deal if you buy the whole season deal than just buying the 1 race pass. But if you're only going to watch a few races, the 1 race pass might be a good option. You get practice sessions live, you get qualifying live, you get a studio show, and then of course you get the race live as well. So I always get the MXGP TV thing just because I am an avid enough fan to sit there and watch it, and sometimes get up early and watch the GPs when they're in Europe. But at the very least, turn it on as a thing to watch when going to bed at evening, and you know, break down what these guys are doing. I love the MXGP class. Like, I'm a GP nut. Everybody's always called me a GP lover, and it's true. I love MXGPs, and I can't freaking wait for this weekend. Like, I'm so stoked. This is A1 Part 2 for me. It's Argentina. So much star power on the line, going to South America, and golly, man, I can't wait for it. And I hope you guys can't wait for it either. And I hope that this video did a pretty decent job detailing some of the stars that we're going to see, some of the riders you can pay attention to, and some of my thoughts and opinions about what could happen this year. So we'll recap what exactly went down at Argentina over the weekend with a recap video coming out on Monday. That's going to be concurrent now with every GP that happens. We'll have a recap video and some gameplay. And just like the Monster Energy Supercross videos, it's going to be the same way. Recapping the race, playing the track, etc., etc. And it's going to be some good fun from here on out. So enjoy the GPs this weekend, round 1 in Argentina. And thanks again so much for watching another video here on Start Your Systems. But my name is Kellen, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.